Hello, and welcome to Midnight Affairs Tales. Your support means everything to us. We'd love to know, which geographical location are you joining from today? At home on the go, share with us below now. Let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The video she forgot to delete. The engine cut off, and Jacob Miller sat in the stillness of his truck. Rain tapped the windshield like static. Lauren had left her car unlocked again. Typical. He leaned over to grab her dry cleaning from the passenger seat when he saw it, wedged between the seat and console. A silver iPhone. Not hers. Not the one he'd bought. No case. No wallpaper. Just a black screen and a gut feeling. He hesitated, then powered it on. No passcode. It opened straight to the camera roll. Videos. Dozens. He tapped the latest one. The frame was shaky, shot at night, someone laughing behind the camera. The sound of glasses clinking. Then the faces came into focus. Lauren, smiling in candlelight. And Ryan Carter, Jacob's oldest friend. Sitting beside her, too close. Her hand on his leg. His lips brushing her neck. Here's to new beginnings, Ryan toasted, raising a glass of red wine. Lauren giggled. Once we bury the past. Once we bury him, Ryan whispered. Jacob dropped the phone. His breath caught in his throat. The blood drained from his face. He sat back, staring at the dashboard. His wife. His best friend. Toasting his downfall like it was a joke. The footage was dated 3 days ago. The night he'd worked late at the site while Lauren claimed she was at her sister's. His heart pounded. But he didn't yell. Didn't cry. Didn't throw the phone out the window like in movies. He stared out at the rain and asked himself, how deep does this go? And more importantly, how do I make them regret every second of it? Hey everyone, we just crossed 4,000 subscribers on Midnight Affairs Tales. I seriously can't thank you enough for all the love and support. Your love for deep, emotional, and shocking stories is what made this channel what it is today. Now, I've started something new. It's called Betrayal Stories Lab. It's where I'll be sharing even crazier stories, full of betrayal, twists you won't see coming, and endings you won't forget. If you've liked the stories so far, I'd love for you to check out the new channel. The link's in the description. Just one tap and you're there. Let's build this one together. First goal, 1,000 subscribers. And hey, if a story hits you hard, share it. You never know who needs it. Thanks for always being here. Let's get back to the story. 2 hours later, Jacob sat at a dinner table with the people in that video. Lauren laughed as she passed the wine. Ryan clapped his back like a brother. Their friend circle was gathered to celebrate Jacob's birthday, an event Lauren had planned. The same woman who toasted his burial. 38 never looked so rugged, Ryan joked, sipping his whiskey. Cheers to you, man. Jacob smiled, but his eyes didn't. Cheers. He noticed everything now. The way Lauren's phone stayed screened down. How Ryan kept stealing glances at her. The private smiles. The inside jokes. He heard it all differently now. Remember Mexico? Lauren grinned at Ryan. Jacob cut in. The trip I didn't go on? She paused. Oh, right. That one. Lies, layered like frosting on the cake they'd brought. Every laugh felt like a bullet. But Jacob kept his mask on, playing the fool. He watched Lauren refill Ryan's glass like a reflex. Watched Ryan thank her with that same smug charm he'd used on Jacob's own sister back in college. It wasn't just cheating. It was planned. Executed. Cold. Hey, Jake, Ryan said, leaning in. You good? You seem quiet. Jacob met his eyes. Held them. Yeah, just thinking about endings. Ryan laughed nervously. That's dark. Jacob smiled. Only for some. The table kept buzzing. But Jacob's mind wasn't in the room anymore. He was already mapping timelines, noting who else knew, who helped cover it up, and how far this betrayal might stretch. He realized something chilling. This wasn't about love. They wanted him out of the way. And now, he wanted them to know he wasn't going quietly. The next morning, Jacob followed Lauren to her Pilates class. Except she didn't go in. She drove past the gym and parked at a brick apartment complex 20 minutes across town. Apartment 3D. He watched from his truck, silent, as she entered without knocking using a key. 10 minutes later, Ryan showed up. Jacob gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. He waited until they were both inside. Then he got out, walked calmly to the mailboxes, and memorized the name on the slot for 3D, Emily Lane. Not Lauren, not Ryan. A third name. Back in his truck, he started digging. Real estate records. Utilities. The lease was under a fake LLC. The payments? Pulled from a joint account Lauren insisted they closed last year. She'd left it open. Hidden. Dirty money running through clean names. That night, Jacob confronted her casually at home. "Hey," he said, pouring himself coffee. "How was Pilates?" She looked up from her phone. "Sweaty. Killer class." He nodded, smiling. "Glad you're keeping the routine." She didn't flinch. She was good. Really good. But he was better now. After she left the kitchen, Jacob pulled her second phone out of his jacket. The one she left in her car. In the bathroom, door locked, he opened it again and kept scrolling. Emails to Ryan. Passwords. Wire transfers. A shared note between them labeled exit strategy. It wasn't just about screwing him over. It was premeditated financial murder. They were setting him up to look like an abuser, bankrupt him, steal the business, and run. But Jacob wasn't going to be the fall guy. He was going to be the author of their downfall. They thought he was asleep at the wheel. They had no idea what he'd do when he finally woke up. The office smelled like lavender and leather-bound lies. "Thanks for coming," Lauren said sweetly as they walked in. "I think this'll really help us." Jacob gave a quiet nod, sweeping the space. The name played on the desk read Dr. Elise Barron, and behind it sat a woman with sharp red nails and a stare too familiar. She smiled. "Jacob, Lauren's told me a lot." Jacob sat down slowly. "All good things, I hope." "Of course," Elise purred. "Why don't we talk about your emotional reactions lately?" It was immediate. Framed. Lauren didn't waste a second before planting the seed of instability. He played along, giving vague answers, letting Elise guide the session while watching her like a hawk. Her questions were too pointed. Her tone, too rehearsed. She wasn't helping. She was documenting. He'd seen this tactic before in messy divorces. Build a paper trail of emotional instability. Make the husband look like a ticking time bomb. "Do you ever feel like shouting?" Elise asked gently. Jacob smiled. "Only in traffic." Lauren laughed. "Too hard." Elise wrote something down. When the session ended, Lauren hugged Elise like an old friend. In the car, Jacob finally asked, "How long have you known her?" Lauren blinked. "Huh? Just since our first session." "Why?" He nodded slowly. "No reason." But by midnight, Jacob was online. Public licensing databases. Academic records. What he found made his stomach twist. Dr. Elise Barron was not a therapist. Her license had been suspended 3 years ago. And more importantly, her maiden name was Elise Carter, Ryan's sister. Jacob walked into the bank with a calmness he didn't feel. "Hi there," he smiled at the teller. "I'd like to check on an old joint account. Might still be active." He handed over his ID. The teller tapped on her keyboard, then paused. "Oh, yes. That account's active. Recent transactions, too. Would you like a printout?" Jacob nodded. "Please." What printed out over the next 60 seconds nearly made his hands shake. Transfers to unfamiliar names. Recurring payments to an LLC titled Lane Star Consulting. The same name that funded the secret apartment. Dozens of micropayments that looked small but added up to over $83,000 in the last 7 months. Jacob remembered Lauren urging him last year, "Let's close that old account." Too messy. She never closed it. She just made sure he forgot it existed. He returned to his truck and scanned the printouts. Every transfer timed perfectly after his work bonuses. Every deposit disappearing through aliases tied to either Ryan or shell companies. This wasn't carelessness. It was calculated. She'd been bleeding him dry long before the affair went physical. Back at home, Jacob tried one last test. He left a fake work email open on his laptop with the subject line, "Upcoming settlement funds, confirm amount?" He waited. 10 minutes later, Lauren walked past his desk. Her eyes flicked toward the screen. She didn't say a word. But the next morning, that email had been deleted. She was watching his every move. But she didn't know he was finally watching hers. Jacob's father's funeral was held on a gray Sunday morning. A small service. Quiet. Respectful. Except for the whispers. He stood near the casket, shaking hands and nodding through condolences, when he heard Lauren's voice too close behind him, too low. She's pushing him to settle by next month. It'll be clean. Ryan's voice replied, half laughing. If he stalls, I'll light a fire under him. Jacob froze. 2 rows behind him, Lauren and Ryan stood beside the floral arch, whispering behind sympathetic smiles. They didn't even have the decency to wait until after the burial. That night, Jacob didn't sleep. He sat alone in the garage, surrounded by his father's old tools and notebooks. That man had built houses from nothing, fixed things with his hands, believed in people. He thought about how disappointed his father would be, not just in Lauren, but in him for letting it happen, for not protecting what he built. By dawn, Jacob had written a list on the wall in Sharpie. Find out who owns Lanestar, trace all account activity, monitor Lauren's phone and laptop, discredit Elise, is the judge connected? Create evidence trail, protect business underneath, in bigger letters, and no more trust. Later that morning, Lauren handed him coffee, smiling like nothing had changed. Jacob took it, nodded politely, and left for work. He didn't take a sip. He was done tasting poison from hands that smiled. Jacob stood in the hallway, staring at the bookshelf Lauren insisted they never move. Decorative, she called it, filled with old photo albums and dusty hardcovers they never read. That night, when she left for her yoga and wine event, Jacob unscrewed the back panel behind it. Inside the wall, empty space, just enough to hide a router, a signal booster, and a compact DVR box. He pulled it out, dust sticking to his fingers. She'd wired the house, not just for Wi-Fi, for surveillance. He connected it to his laptop. Files flooded the screen, camera feeds from around the house, each one archived and labeled. Kitchen, bedroom, garage, all time-stamped. One video played, Ryan entering the house while Jacob was at work, Lauren leading him into the living room. The audio was faint, but not enough to miss what Ryan said as he sat down. He's too soft. You'll get everything. Just smile and act like he still matters. Jacob's stomach turned, but he didn't flinch. He took notes, copied files, backed everything to an encrypted drive. When Lauren returned later, laughing about how much she needed that stretch, he was at the sink washing dishes. Long night? He asked casually. Yeah, Tina and I caught up. Girl talk, she replied, peeling off her scarf. Jacob nodded. You always deserve time for yourself. She kissed his cheek. I knew you'd understand. She went upstairs. He wiped the spot where she kissed him like it burned. By midnight, Jacob had installed his own system, hidden cameras, a discreet microphone under her nightstand, keystroke software on her laptop. If she wanted a war of secrets, she should have chosen someone who didn't build systems for a living. The next morning, Jacob walked into the law office of Hayes and Stern, where he and Lauren had agreed to handle the divorce process amicably. He sat across from Nathan Stern, the partner Lauren had chosen. Clean-shaven, polished, practiced smile. Jacob, Nathan said, shaking his hand. Glad we could meet civilly. Sure, Jacob replied. I'm all for transparency. They reviewed preliminary documents. Nothing too aggressive yet. Nathan was careful, smooth with his words. But Jacob watched his eyes. Watched him dodge questions about Lauren's financials, about the date of separation, about who'd been staying at the second property. I'm just here to make sure we do right by both of you, Nathan said. Jacob smiled tightly. Appreciate that. Just want fairness. After the meeting, Jacob didn't go home. He went to the county clerk's office and pulled professional license records, financial disclosures, anything he could find. By afternoon, he found it. Nathan Stern had been cited 5 years ago for conflict of interest. A case dismissed quietly after the client withdrew a complaint. He also found a shared holding in a shell real estate fund, Lanestar Holdings LLC. Same name, same tie. Jacob's hands tightened around the steering wheel as he left the parking lot. Lauren didn't just hire a lawyer. She hired a co-conspirator. Back home, Jacob walked into the living room with 2 glasses of wine. Thought I'd toast to us. Keeping things civil. Lauren blinked, surprised. That's sweet. They drank in silence. She didn't know the glassware was bugged. "Should I keep using Nathan?" she asked out loud. "Or will that raise flags?" Jacob didn't flinch, just nodded and sipped. They wanted a trap. He'd give them one, and they wouldn't even realize they were walking in until the door slammed shut behind them. 3 days later, a court notice arrived, assigning a judge to their divorce case. Judge Harold D. Lawson. The name wasn't familiar at first, but Jacob had a good memory. He remembered Lauren's father, the retired senator, once talking about old golf buddies who still owed him favors. He pulled up a photo of Lawson, then another of him at Lauren's wedding standing in the background, shaking hands with her father. Jacob felt the breath catch in his chest. This wasn't bad luck. It was design. Lauren had handpicked every piece of the board, the therapist, the lawyer, the judge. All connected, all subtle enough to pass casual scrutiny. But now that he looked, the web was there. That night, Jacob visited his old mentor, Carl Donovan, a retired family court clerk. They sat in Carl's cluttered den, surrounded by paper files and scotch. "Lawson," Carl said, flipping through a database. "He's clean, officially. But yeah, he's got old ties to state politicians. One recusal years ago for bias. Never confirmed." Jacob leaned back. "Think I can get him off the case?" "Not without evidence. But if you can show conflict, even a hint of favoritism?" Jacob nodded. "That's all I need." He left with a burner email account and instructions to submit anonymous leads through the court's review board. At home, Lauren was already in bed, scrolling her phone, blank-faced. He kissed her forehead. She barely noticed. He pulled the office door shut behind him, sat down at the laptop, and typed, "To the Judicial Review Board. Judge Lawson has a personal tie to one party in my divorce case. Please investigate the following events." He attached photos, dates, hints, enough to stir suspicion, but not enough to trace. Lauren had built a courtroom to bury him. He was going to burn it down, one brick at a time. The pieces were moving. Quietly. Jacob didn't lash out, didn't confront. That's what they were waiting for. A messy reaction. Something they could twist into rage, instability, abuse. He gave them none of it. Instead, he played his part, calm, cooperative, a little emotionally distant but still dependable. He made dinner twice that week, cleaned the garage, texted Lauren updates from work like he used to. Meanwhile, he was building a digital war room. The files were organized into 3 categories: financial fraud, legal conflict of interest, personal infidelity, plus coercion. Each one had subfolders: evidence logs, transcripts, screenshots, bank activity, wire transfers, IP logs. He didn't just want to expose Lauren and Ryan. He wanted to build a case so tight they couldn't wiggle free from any angle. By Thursday, he had backups stored on 2 encrypted drives, one hidden inside a toolbox in his truck, the other in a storage unit under a fake name. But the most satisfying moment came late one night when he finally confronted someone, indirectly. Jacob uploaded an edited clip from Lauren and Ryan's secret video, the one with the toast, to a private YouTube link. No names. Just that one moment. Once we bury him. He emailed the link anonymously to Ryan's fiancée. The next morning, Ryan didn't show up at work. His office voicemail changed. His fiancée's Instagram? Wiped clean. Jacob didn't need to hear the screaming match. He'd already won that round. It arrived at Ryan's office on a Monday afternoon, tucked in with a stack of routine contracts. A plain red envelope. No name. No return address. Inside, 2 things. A photo of Ryan and Lauren kissing, taken from inside the secret apartment. A printed copy of the forged prenup draft Lauren had saved on her laptop. The one that rewrote ownership of Jacob's construction business entirely in her name. In bold red pen, across the top, "You're not as invisible as you think." Jacob watched from his truck, parked half a block away, as Ryan opened the envelope. Ryan's face changed fast. He darted back into the building, phone to his ear. Panicked. Sweating. Jacob didn't need to follow. He knew the timeline now. The document showed Ryan wasn't just an affair partner. He was complicit in financial forgery. It was a felony. And the fear written across Ryan's face proved he knew it. That night, Jacob walked into the house and found Lauren in the kitchen, pouring wine like nothing had happened. "Long day?" she asked. He shrugged. "Couldn't be better." She watched him a beat too long. "Something feels different." Jacob smiled. "Yeah, I guess I'm just seeing things clearer now." He kissed her cheek and walked out before she could respond. Back in his truck, he opened his laptop and added a new folder to the war room. Cracks and Ryan. The game had changed. Ryan wasn't just a threat anymore. He was a liability to her. Jacob knew it wouldn't take long for his complaint about Judge Lawson to cause waves. By Friday, an official inquiry had been launched. Quiet, internal, but enough to pause their proceedings. Lauren got the email during brunch. He saw her check her phone and stiffen, jaw tightening. She tried to play it off. They said Lawson's stepping aside, she told him over coffee. Some review thing. Jacob acted surprised. Weird. I thought he was solid. He is. Probably just some paperwork thing. But her hands trembled as she stirred her drink. Behind the scenes, Jacob was already talking to a second journalist, an independent blogger who'd written about legal favoritism in state family courts. He fed her just enough detail to spark curiosity: a judge, a senator's daughter, suspicious case assignments. She asked for more. Jacob promised it was coming. At home, Lauren grew cautious. Changed her phone lock. Started making more calls in the garage with the car doors shut. Jacob didn't care. The garage was mic'd too. Late one night, she said something into the phone that told him everything. If he finds out about the offshore account, we're screwed. She was cracking. Jacob replayed the recording 3 times. Memorized the tone of panic. Then he emailed a digital copy of that recording anonymously to the journalist. He didn't sign his name. He didn't need to. The truth was starting to speak for itself. And the walls Lauren had built to trap him were now collapsing from the inside. The name on the lease was Emily Lane, but Jacob knew that was fake. Nobody named Emily had ever been seen entering or leaving Unit 3D except Lauren and Ryan. Until now. Jacob waited 2 days. Camped in his truck across the street with coffee, binoculars, and a long list of what-ifs. On Wednesday afternoon, a woman exited the building. Early 30s. Sharp jawline. Tense shoulders. She carried a gym bag and looked over her shoulder before unlocking her car. Jacob followed from a distance. Just enough to see her route. She didn't go to work. She drove to a worn-out cafe on the edge of downtown, sat in the back, and ordered nothing. He waited 20 minutes, then walked in. "Emily Lane?" he asked. She froze. Her eyes darted toward the exit. "Do I know you?" "No," Jacob said calmly. "But I know what Lauren and Ryan used your name for. I also know they're setting you up as a scapegoat." Silence. She blinked fast. "You're Jacob." That told him everything. She motioned for him to sit. "I needed the money," she said. "Lauren said I'd never be involved. Just sign some things, collect a check." Then Ryan moved in. Said it was temporary. Said it was for a friend hiding from an abusive husband. Jacob leaned forward. "They're planning to name you in the fraud if things go south." Her voice shook. "I figured. That's why I started keeping copies of everything." Jacob smiled for the first time in days. "Good. Because I think we can help each other." They met again in a parking garage 2 nights later. Emily handed Jacob a manila envelope, receipts, lease documents, emails between her and Lauren, and photos of Ryan using the apartment while she was away. One email caught Jacob's eye. From l.hawthorne@lanestar-consulting.com. Subject: "Quick favor, can you add a second user to the apartment lease? Just needs to be buried under the LLC." The name Lanestar Consulting jumped out. Jacob had seen that name in the old bank statements. He traced the wire transfers back to that LLC. Emily squinted. "They said that company had nothing to do with this." "It doesn't," Jacob said, "because it doesn't even exist." He had already run the name through the state business registry. No valid listing. The domain for the email? A custom private server registered offshore. "It's a ghost company," Jacob explained. "They're laundering money through it." Emily's eyes widened. "Jesus. Which means," he continued, "your signature on those fake leases? It's now evidence in a federal-level fraud scheme." Her hands trembled. "I didn't know." "I believe you," Jacob said. But they won't care. Unless you hand over everything. Will you? Emily hesitated, then nodded. Yes. That night, Jacob opened a new folder on his encrypted drive. Lankstar Shell Company evidence chain. He backed up everything. He added Emily to a burner email list under the name Cassandra. He instructed her not to answer unknown calls, not to return to 3D. And he flagged one particular email thread between Lauren and Ryan discussing settlement leverage and the need to erase Cassandra's trail. They were planning to frame her, use her as the patsy. Now, she was Jacob's witness. And Jacob? He was building a case no one could outrun. Lauren's birthday came on a Friday. Jacob made it special, just like she wanted. A private dinner, a guest list of their closest friends, candlelight, red wine, even a custom cake that read, "To many more years of us." He gave her a box, wrapped in gold ribbon. Inside, a delicate diamond bracelet. She gasped, playing the role. "It's beautiful, Jacob. Only for you," he said with a grin. Everyone applauded. But what she didn't know, tucked into the lining of the jewelry box was a micro-listening device. Battery life, 48 hours. Sound range, 25 feet. Memory, continuous loop recording. He didn't need video this time. He just needed voices. And her friends? They delivered. Later that night, while Jacob stood near the patio pretending to answer emails, he caught Lauren inside at the dining table with her inner circle. She whispered over her wine. He softened. "I think he'll settle quick." Her best friend laughed. "Men don't think straight when they're desperate." Lauren smirked. "After the split, I'm keeping the business name. He doesn't even know we filed the trademark." Someone else chimed in. "What if he fights back?" Lauren leaned in. "That's what the therapist logs were for. Nathan said it'll hold if we need to push a psych angle." Jacob didn't flinch, just listened. The plan wasn't just betrayal, it was total erasure. Lauren wanted his name, his business, his dignity. But what she didn't know was that every word she said was now evidence. That night, as she slept beside him, Jacob uploaded the audio to his backup drive and labeled it "Birthday Confession, Manipulation plus Legal Setup." He stared at the ceiling, eyes burning with clarity. They weren't taking anything from him. They were building their own destruction. Ryan sat behind his desk at Halston Financial, his face flushed and sweaty under the office lights. The red envelope had shaken him. The private video, the forged prenup copy. He barely slept. Jacob watched from a nearby building rooftop, eyes fixed through binoculars. His source inside the firm, a quiet janitor he'd paid off, had delivered word. Ryan was spiraling. Emails sent to his legal counsel. Emergency meetings booked with Lauren. Silent tension behind every transaction he touched. Jacob made sure he got more mail. 2 days later, Ryan received another package delivered directly to his receptionist, disguised as legal paperwork. Inside, screenshots of wire transfers traced from Lankstar Consulting to the apartment lease account, plus a brief letter. "You played banker. Now it's your credit line that's bleeding." Jacob didn't need a response. The reaction was enough. Ryan didn't show up to work the next day. Halston's internal fraud team launched an immediate review. He was placed on temporary leave pending investigation. Lauren's text to Jacob that evening was short, almost rattled. "Have you talked to Ryan?" Jacob replied, didn't even know he was back in town. He left it at that. But while she stared at a silent phone, wondering who was exposing their secrets, Jacob was watching the digital dominoes fall. Inside the war room folder, he marked Ryan's tab. Asset destabilized. Target now weak. Move to isolation. He didn't need Ryan gone. He needed Ryan to crumble, so Lauren had no one left to lean on. Jacob never thought he'd see the day when he'd sit across from Marjorie Hawthorne again, Lauren's mother, a woman who always wore pearls, even with sweatpants, and smiled like she knew everyone's secrets. They met at a quiet country club cafe, the same one where Marjorie once bragged about her daughter marrying a man who builds things. Now she stirred her iced tea without looking up. "I don't want to pick sides," she said flatly. "You already did," Jacob replied. She exhaled, slow. "Lauren told me you were emotionally unstable, that you'd snap eventually, that we needed to protect ourselves." Jacob kept his jaw tight. "And you believe that?" She showed me texts, Marjorie said. Voicemails. But now I wonder if they were edited. He slid a small envelope across the table. She opened it. Photos, timestamped logs, audio transcripts. One included Lauren laughing about getting Jacob to snap just to justify the restraining order. Marjorie's hand shook slightly. I'm not asking for help, Jacob said. But I am warning you. If this goes public, your name will be in it. The property ties, the campaign donations, the golf outings with Judge Lawson. Don't think people won't trace it. Her eyes sharpened. Is that a threat? No. That's a choice, Jacob said. Decide who you're protecting, your daughter's lies or your own legacy. She stared at the envelope for a long beat, then quietly folded it and tucked it into her purse. She didn't apologize, but her tone shifted. She was always good at making people believe her, Marjorie said. Even me. Jacob stood. Not anymore. As he left, her voice followed him, low, almost distant. She started seeing Ryan before the wedding. You deserve to know that. Jacob walked out into the daylight. He didn't look back. Jacob hit play. The recording buzzed through his headphones, audio from Lauren's birthday, captured by the hidden mic in the gift box. The background clinks of wine glasses. Laughs. Chatter. Then the voice he was waiting for. If he gives me even the smallest reason, I'll push the psych route. He'll fold. He always does. Jacob paused, scrolled, played again. A new voice chimed in. You're cold, Lore. I mean, damn. Lauren laughed. You have to be when you're cleaning house. The room erupted in tipsy giggles. Jacob didn't smile. He cut the clip, cleaned the audio, and saved the best 10 minutes to a separate encrypted folder labeled Premeditation, Evidence of Coercion. But it was more than evidence now. It was tone. It showed intent, malice, manipulation, and most importantly, it proved this wasn't emotional chaos. This was a well-orchestrated takedown attempt from day one. That night, he copied the audio to a USB and dropped it off at his attorney's office under the radar. No email, no digital trail. He wanted it off the grid, protected, ready when it mattered. At home, Lauren was in her robe, pouring a second glass of wine. Long day, she asked. Jacob nodded, walking past her. Just tying up loose ends. She didn't notice his eyes lingering on the glass in her hand. Didn't see how carefully he watched her. He didn't hate her. Hate was loud. It burned too fast. What he felt now was colder, sharper. He was no longer defending himself. He was preparing the verdict. Jacob knew Mark Calhoun was a risk. Mark owed him a favor. A big one. Years ago, Jacob helped him avoid a civil lawsuit after a bad data breach at his old job. In exchange, Jacob had earned a silent loyalty and a backdoor into Mark's world of shadows. Now, sitting across from him in a rundown diner on the outskirts of town, Jacob laid out the details. I need access to a private server. Custom domain. Lanestair-consulting.com. Mark whistled. Corporate ghost shell? Worse. It's their laundering pipeline. Mark sipped his coffee, eyes narrowing. You want a trace, a takedown, or a data dump? Everything, Jacob said. But I need it quiet. No heat. Mark nodded. I can scrub metadata, mirror the server, extract communication logs. But you're dealing with encrypted notes. This isn't Google Drive stuff. Jacob slid over a flash drive. That's a VPN log. IP trail from Lauren's devices. It'll get you inside. Mark plugged it into his laptop and grinned. Well, damn. She's sloppy. Jacob leaned in. You get me into that system, and I'll make sure nobody ever connects your name to it. Mark cracked his knuckles. Give me 48 hours. Jacob left the diner with a racing pulse. If this worked, he'd have everything. Email threads, fund transfers, maybe even copies of messages sent to the corrupt lawyer and judge. And once he had it, he wouldn't need to accuse Lauren. He'd just let her own words do the talking. Jacob sat in the back row of a small seminar hall on a Sunday afternoon. The event was titled, Emotional Wellness for High-Conflict Couples. The speaker? Dr. Elise Barron. Or at least, that's how she was introduced. She stood in front of a projection screen, smiling like she hadn't tried to sabotage a marriage 3 weeks earlier. Jacob held a worn folder in his lap. Inside were documents showing her license suspension, disciplinary board citations, and a forged recommendation letter Lauren had sent to their mediator. The signature on the letter was from an old professor who died 2 years ago. Jacob waited until the Q&A. He raised his hand. "I have a question," he said, loud and clear. "Do you inform your clients that your license was revoked in 2020 for malpractice?" The room went silent. Elise froze. I think you've got me confused with." Jacob stepped forward, handing the folder to a woman filming the event. "I've got paperwork and audio from a session where you suggested falsifying behavior logs. Want to play it for the room?" Gasps. Murmurs. Elise's face drained of color. "I think we're done here," she muttered, rushing off stage. Within 24 hours, the clip went viral in legal therapy circles. Elise's website went dark. Her LinkedIn vanished. Her professional allies ghosted her. Back home, Jacob watched Lauren scroll her phone in silence. Her lips tightened. Her thumb stopped moving. He didn't ask what she saw. He already knew. Her therapist just became her first public liability. And Jacob wasn't done yet. The USB drive Mark handed Jacob was wrapped in a receipt for gas station coffee. No fingerprints. No metadata. "This drive doesn't exist," Mark said. "What's on it?" Mark lit a cigarette and looked Jacob dead in the eye. "Everything." That night, Jacob sat in the garage, alone in the cold, watching his entire life unravel on screen. Email chains. Encrypted bank statements. Conversations between Lauren, Ryan, Nathan the lawyer, and even a staffer linked to the judge. There were codes. False identities. Asset movement plans. But what caught Jacob's attention most was a memo Lauren had drafted, titled Phase 2 Emergency Protocol. It laid out what to do if Jacob found out. Suggested tactics included filing for an emergency mental health evaluation using the therapy logs to discredit him, leaking anonymous complaints to clients and subcontractors, play public victim, ensure media narrative favors me. It wasn't paranoia. She was prepared to destroy him. Personally, professionally, publicly. But now he had it all. He selected the memo, dragged it to a new folder labeled Failsafe. Then he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a lighter. He burned the original printed copy of their wedding vows, once framed on their bedroom wall, watched it curl and blacken. Then he opened a fresh document on his laptop. Title, Settlement Proposal, Counter Strategy. He wasn't just gathering evidence anymore. He was preparing for open war. The letter came in a sleek, white envelope, stamped urgent. Lauren opened it at the kitchen island. Jacob watched from across the room, pretending to scroll his phone. She frowned. "Read it twice." "What's this?" she muttered, then glanced at him. "You didn't get one?" Jacob walked over slowly. "What is it?" "It's a notice. The court's pausing our case. Something about administrative review." He took the paper, skimmed it. The language was dry, formal. But buried in the legal jargon was the truth. The judge had been officially removed. Jacob handed it back. "Probably just back up from the docket overload. I'm sure they'll reassign soon." Lauren tried to hide the panic blooming in her eyes. "Yeah, I guess." She stepped away, typing furiously on her phone. Jacob poured himself a drink and let the silence stretch. He'd planted the seeds weeks ago. The judicial complaint, the quiet tip to the reporter, the whisper through the clerk's network. And now it had bloomed, her hand-picked judge removed, her legal grip slipping. By sunset, Lauren was in the guest room on a long call. Jacob sat on the back porch, watching the light fade across the treetops, listening through a live mic feed. "We can't wait on this. If the new judge isn't friendly, we're exposed." "No, Ryan's already compromised. He's being investigated." Then we fast-track the leak. The abuse narrative. "I don't care if it's clean or not." Jacob leaned back, the old wood creaking beneath him. She was accelerating. Desperate. Dangerous. But she was also cornered. And the next move wouldn't come from her. The apartment was small, the paint chipped, and the elevator groaned like it hadn't been serviced in years. But Jacob wasn't here for comfort. Unit 6B. Mark's secondary server hub. He stepped inside a cramped room filled with blinking towers, old monitors, and a tangled jungle of wires. Mark sat hunched over a keyboard like a surgeon in the middle of heart surgery. You said you had something, Jacob said. Mark didn't look up. You ever wonder why she needed offshore routing? Jacob leaned in. Tell me. Mark spun the monitor. On screen was an unsecured archive folder Lauren had failed to encrypt fully. Inside were PDFs, JPGs, receipts, scans, and something worse. Photos of senator events, private parties, and donation forms connected to Lane Star. Even Jacob recognized a few faces, state officials, a DA, a judge who once denied his city development permit without reason. Lane Star was never just for hiding money, Mark said. It was for buying people. Jacob's stomach turned. How many? Mark shrugged. Enough to make headlines. Enough to destroy careers. Jacob stared at the folder. This wasn't just a personal betrayal anymore. This was a system, corrupt, protected, and dangerous. Do we leak it all? Mark asked. Jacob shook his head slowly. No, not yet. We use it piece by piece. Force fractures. Break the web at the weak spots. He copied the files to a new drive. One he'd store separately. One he wouldn't touch until the moment was right. And as he left that dark, humming room, Jacob knew he was no longer fighting to save his name. He was fighting to rip out the entire rotten root. The day Ryan finally cracked was colder than usual, sky heavy with clouds, wind slicing through the streets of downtown like a warning. Jacob waited at a cafe across from the law offices where Ryan had worked. Once a corner office shark, now just another liability sinking under internal reviews. Ryan arrived late, unshaven, hollow-eyed, paranoid. Jacob sipped his coffee. Calm, measured. I know what you're doing, Ryan snapped, sliding into the seat across from him. Jacob tilted his head. Then why are you here? Ryan glanced around. You think you're smart? You think exposing me takes her down? I already have enough to ruin both of you, Jacob said flatly. But I want something else. Ryan froze. I want you to walk away. From her. From the fake company. From everything. You vanish, or I release every document. Ryan's jaw tightened. She'll burn you. She already tried. Jacob leaned in, voice like steel. You were just a tool, Ryan. She never loved you. You were the backup plan. You helped her frame me, destroy my business, and she still wouldn't give you her real name on lease docs. Ryan blinked. His breath hitched. Jacob laid down one last photo. A candid shot of Lauren with a third man, taken 2 weeks ago at a late dinner. Intimate. Familiar. Ryan's face collapsed. She's still running games, Jacob said. And you're not even her top priority anymore. Ryan sat in stunned silence. Jacob stood. Think carefully. I'm offering you freedom. Or you can stay loyal and go down with her. He left without waiting for a reply. By nightfall, Ryan's car was gone. His social media accounts deleted. The office confirmed he'd resigned immediately. And Lauren? She never saw it coming. One betrayal down. One more to go. The first leak didn't come from Jacob. It came from an anonymous email address linked to a burner phone he'd left in a public park hours earlier. The file attached? A zipped folder named Lane Star Confidential Funding Trail. Inside, transaction logs between Lauren's fake LLC and 2 state political committees, both flagged for ethics violations in past election cycles. He sent it to a single reporter, Sarah Elridge, an investigative bulldog known for torching corrupt campaigns and surviving lawsuits that would have buried lesser journalists. 10 hours later, the headline hit the internet. Exclusive. Leaked files link political donations to Shell Company. Undisclosed backers, no names yet. No Jacob. No Lauren. Just enough truth to draw blood and raise questions. Jacob watched the chaos unfold from his laptop while sipping a black coffee, the news site refreshing every few minutes. TV pundits picked it up by evening. Twitter exploded with threads trying to decode the Shell structure, name the figures behind it. Lauren didn't say a word all day. But that night, he saw her in the backyard, on the phone, pacing. Voice tight. Frustrated. No, it wasn't supposed to leak. Who sent it? You said this thing was airtight. Jacob watched from the upstairs window. Calm. Steady. Lauren was unraveling. And she didn't even know this was just the opening move. 2 days later, Jacob returned home from a meeting with his lawyer to find a police cruiser in the driveway. An officer met him at the door. "Mr. Miller, we received a report from your wife regarding harassment and emotional intimidation. She's filed for a temporary protective order." Jacob didn't flinch. "Of course," he said quietly. "May I get my attorney on the line?" They nodded. Inside the station, the process was clinical. His hands were steady as they took a statement. He answered every question, calm and clear. But Jacob was already ahead. He provided a signed statement from a licensed investigator, timestamps proving he hadn't been near Lauren at the alleged moment. Even better, he submitted audio from the gift box bug, where Lauren openly discussed faking mental instability to push a court order. The officer's expression shifted as the clip played. "I'd like to formally counterfile," Jacob said, his voice even, "for defamation and filing a false report." They released him that night. At home, the silence was colder. Lauren didn't greet him. She stayed locked in the bedroom. But Jacob wasn't after words anymore. He was collecting actions, documents, records, patterns. And this move? It was sloppy, rushed. It told him exactly what he needed to know. Lauren was losing control. And now, the system was watching. Monday morning came with a side of poetic justice. A local morning news segment aired a breaking update tied to the leaked Lanestar documents. The anchor, a polished brunette with a bright smile, read from the teleprompter with barely concealed tension. While authorities continue to trace financial fraud linked to a shell company believed to influence campaign donations, unnamed sources suggest a prominent divorce case may be connected. Jacob turned up the volume. The anchor paused, then continued. And though no individuals have been formally named, questions are rising around the Hawthorne family, particularly Lauren Hawthorne, known for her involvement with several public initiatives tied to disputed funding. There it was. Her name. On air. In front of thousands. Jacob sat on the couch, not smiling, not cheering, just breathing in the weight of it. Upstairs, a door slammed. Lauren came down seconds later, phone clutched in her hand. "Did you see this?" she snapped. "What the hell is happening?" Jacob looked up. Calm. "What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. My name is on the news," she shouted, pacing the room. "This is exactly what I warned Ryan about." He stared at her. "Then maybe you should have listened to yourself." Her eyes widened. I didn't leak anything," he said plainly. "But if you're this nervous about what's out there, maybe there's a reason." She turned pale. "You don't get to pretend you're innocent in all this." Jacob stood. "No, but I'm not the one whose name just got tied to financial crimes on live TV." He walked past her, leaving her in the middle of the living room, frozen, gripping her phone like it might catch fire. Outside, a storm cloud rolled in. And inside the war room on Jacob's laptop, a new folder opened. Phase 2, Public Downfall. The alert came through at 8:42 a.m. Jacob's phone buzzed with a one-line update from his attorney. Account freeze approved. Assets immobilized. Phase complete. He didn't smile. He didn't move. Just stared at the message, letting the moment land. Weeks of documentation. A full forensic financial audit. Proof of fraudulent fund movement through Lanestar. The court had finally responded with swift precision. Every joint account was now sealed. Every asset tied to Lauren's LLC frozen. He glanced out the window. Lauren's Lexus wasn't in the driveway. She was at brunch, the usual Sunday performance with her inner circle. He waited. Exactly 17 minutes later, the shouting started. She stormed through the door, heels clacking against the floor, slamming her purse onto the kitchen counter. "My card was declined," she snapped. "At brunch. In front of everyone. Do you know how humiliating that is?" Jacob closed his laptop slowly. "That sounds unfortunate." Her eyes narrowed. "What did you do?" "I followed the money," he said plainly. "Turns out, so did the court. You can't freeze my accounts. Those are my funds." "They're not," Jacob replied. "They're ours. And when you started laundering through fake companies, that made them criminal." Lauren's voice dropped to a hiss. "You think this makes you safe? It makes you a target." Jacob stood, walked past her, calm. "You already pulled the trigger," he said. "You just forgot I had body armor." Jacob drove across town in silence. Apartment 3D. the safe house Lauren used. The one he traced back to false signatures, buried rent payments, and private meetings with Ryan and Emily Lane. But today, the building felt, still, like it had given up holding secrets. He knocked once. No answer. Then used the spare key Emily had given him. The door creaked open. Inside, empty. No furniture. No files. No wine glasses. No pictures. Just bare floors and a faint smell of lemon cleaner. He walked slowly through the rooms, scanning every corner, looking for the trail Lauren assumed she erased. Then, in the closet, a single envelope. No name, no note. Just a flash drive inside. Jacob took it home, plugged it in. A single folder, redemption, inside. A final gift from Emily. Audio files of conversations between Lauren and Ryan, including one where Lauren threatened to leak Emily's name if she ever turned. Another, where Ryan admitted to moving campaign money through Lane Star because nobody would question a woman's company. It wasn't just betrayal. It was proof of coercion, exploitation, and intent. Emily had turned over the kill switch. Jacob sat back, staring at the screen. The apartment wasn't a hideaway anymore. It was a grave. And now, the ghosts inside it were finally talking. Lauren's call came at 10:03 p.m. No rage. No sarcasm. Just silence on the line for 5 full seconds. Then, quietly, they fired me. Jacob said nothing. They said the optics were too risky. The ethics board's monitoring the case, whatever that means. Still, Jacob stayed silent. I built everything. My own network. My own future. And now, it's gone. He closed his eyes. You burned too many bridges, Lauren. I didn't think you had this in you, she whispered. You were always the safe bet. The stable one. You were supposed to fall apart. His voice stayed low. I did fall apart. You just didn't stick around to see what I built with the pieces. She hung up. Jacob sat in the dark, letting the silence settle. No music. No news. Just the sound of his own breathing. Then, his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Mr. Miller, this is Assistant DA Keller. We've been forwarded materials from a whistleblower involving Lane Star Consulting and possible political bribery. Can we schedule a confidential meeting? Jacob replied, tomorrow, 10 a.m. He locked the phone, stood up, and looked out the window. Outside, the wind carried the first hint of cold rain. Inside, Jacob felt something he hadn't in months. Peace, but with purpose. Lauren's face was on the morning news again, but this time, not as a socialite or charity organizer. She was listed as a subject of interest in a growing political scandal with ties to multiple campaign donation violations, shell corporations, and unauthorized use of joint marital funds. Jacob stood in the kitchen, sipping black coffee, watching her frozen image on screen. A freeze frame pulled from an old gala, now repurposed as the face of a scandal. She burst into the room moments later, phone in hand, hair half-tied, voice shaking. Did you see it? Who the hell leaked this? Jacob didn't even turn around. It's public record now. Not hard to find once someone actually looks. She paced, panicked. My email's been hacked. My office cleared out my desk. Donors are pulling back. I'm being erased like I never existed. Jacob sat down at the table. Calm. Focused. Then maybe you shouldn't have built your entire future on lies and stolen names. She spun toward him. You think this makes you noble? No, he said quietly. It makes me free. Lauren's eyes burned. You're not free. You're just hiding behind silence. Jacob looked up, met her stare. No, I'm watching you drown in your own flood. She didn't reply. Just stood there, chest rising fast, fists clenched. But Jacob had already moved on. He was meeting the DA in less than an hour. The meeting with Assistant DA Keller was clean, controlled, and deadly quiet. Inside a glass-walled office downtown, Jacob laid out a case file thicker than some court documents. Bank transfers. Secret recordings. The Lancer structure. The therapist's fake credentials. A list of names. Keller skimmed page after page in silence. How long have you had this? She finally asked. Long enough to be patient, Jacob replied. Why now? Because I'm done surviving, he said. Now I want accountability. She nodded. as narrowing as she hit the memo Lauren labeled emergency protocol. "This could bury people," she murmured. Jacob leaned in. "That's the idea." The DA made no promises, but she requested full digital access, witnesses for statements, and Jacob's continued silence until formal subpoenas dropped. Jacob walked out into the bright city sunlight feeling something strange: control. Not just revenge. Power. Then, 3 weeks of total silence. No new news. No text from Lauren. No lawyers. No whispers. It was unnerving. But Jacob didn't panic. He worked. He lifted weights. He organized his tools. Every moment, he stayed sharp. Then on a Thursday morning, everything broke at once. He woke up to 14 missed calls, 2 voicemails, and a news alert that made his chest still. Fraud ring investigation expands. Arrest warrant issued for Nathan Stern. They showed it live. Footage of Nathan Stern, Lauren's sleek, smug divorce lawyer, being escorted out of his office in cuffs by 2 federal agents. A Navy windbreaker marked DOJ. Cameras flashing. Nathan shielding his face. Jacob sat on the edge of the bed, eyes locked on the screen. Lauren walked into the room behind him, holding her phone with both hands. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in 5 days. "He was supposed to protect us," she muttered. Jacob didn't respond. Her voice cracked. "They have everything, don't they?" He stood, walked to the door, then stopped. "Look back. They don't have everything yet," he said quietly. "But they will." She didn't follow, just sat on the bed, defeated, scrolling through texts that probably weren't being answered anymore. Later that day, Jacob received an encrypted message from the DA's office. "We'll be moving to freeze all partner accounts tied to Stern's active firms, including divorce case retainer funds. Confirmation soon." Jacob closed his eyes. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about proving that the people who tried to break him never saw what happens when a builder fights back. The community forum was packed. Rows of folding chairs filled the town center's multi-purpose hall, buzzing with reporters, legal aides, and residents who suddenly had a reason to care about campaign donations. Jacob stood off stage, behind the curtain, gripping a note card that was now blank. He wouldn't be reading anything. He was here to speak as a citizen, a man whose life had been used, twisted, and nearly erased, not by strangers, but by people in power who thought he'd stay quiet. Next up, the moderator announced, Jacob Miller, local contractor and key whistleblower in the Lane Star case. Applause broke out, hesitant at first, then louder. Jacob stepped onto the stage. Spotlights hit his face. He blinked once, then spoke. 6 months ago, I was almost erased. He paused. I thought it was just my marriage ending. Turns out, it was bigger. Way bigger. He spoke clearly, no theatrics. Just the truth. About the fake therapist. The lawyer. The judge who got reassigned. The business that wasn't real. And the woman he'd once trusted with everything. I didn't come here to burn people down, Jacob said. I came to protect the next person who's about to be chewed up by a system that protects its liars. By the time he finished, the room was silent. And then, people stood. Reporters raised hands. Neighbors approached him after. One woman, maybe mid-50s, leaned in and whispered, I'm divorcing a man like her. You just gave me the spine to finish it. Jacob nodded. That night, he added something new to his war room. Impact. Legacy begins. Lauren tried calling him again. This time, he didn't let it ring out. He answered, but only said one thing. Check your inbox. Then he hung up. At exactly 9 a.m., every contact tied to Lauren's professional life, charities, board members, colleagues, campaign teams, received an encrypted link. No name, no message. Just a single file titled, Everything You Didn't Know, and What She Never Thought You'd See. Inside, audio of her birthday conversation, screenshots of her emergency manipulation plan, evidence of coaching Emily to lie, the prenup forgery, and a final breakdown of funds rerouted from donor money to her personal account. Every document was real. No opinion. No slander. Just pure, undeniable truth. The fallout began within the hour. Board members resigned. Charities released statements. Her own PR agency pulled support. By sunset, Lauren's inbox was a graveyard of closed doors and lost power. She sat in the kitchen that night, glass of untouched wine, face unreadable. Jacob walked past without a word. She didn't speak either, because by now even she knew. There was nothing left to spin. Jacob stood outside the house they once called home. The place was quiet, still, almost peaceful, like the storm had moved through and taken all the noise with it. Inside, Lauren was upstairs, probably scrolling through the wreckage, checking news articles that wouldn't die, reading texts that no longer came with sympathy. He walked to the hall closet, pulled out the last of his things. Tools. A duffel. The old watch his father gave him before he passed. The one Lauren said wasn't really his style. Jacob zipped the bag, then walked through the kitchen one last time. Lauren appeared in the doorway. "You're leaving?" He nodded. "You got what you wanted," she said quietly. Jacob looked her in the eye. "No, I just made sure you lost what you stole." She stepped forward, suddenly softer. "It didn't start out this way. You have to believe that." He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out the divorce decree, stamped and finalized. He placed it on the table beside her untouched wine. She looked down, said nothing. Jacob opened the front door, sunlight spilling into the hallway. "No more smoke, Lauren," he said. "Not from me. Not from you. I'm done breathing in what you burned." And just like that, he walked out. No fight. No screaming. Just a man finally reclaiming his peace. 2 weeks after walking out, Jacob stood in front of a worn-down storefront on the corner of Lincoln and Hayes. It used to be a pawn shop. Now the sign above read, "The Miller Project, Legal Resource and Support for Victims of Financial Abuse." Inside, walls were freshly painted, soft beige tones with warm wood counters. A modest reception desk. 2 meeting rooms in back. No fancy offices. No ego. Just purpose. A woman named Val, mid-30s, ex-accountant turned advocate, handled intake. Jacob focused on structure, organization, process. "Applications are already piling up," Val said, handing him a folder. Mostly women. A few men. All blindsided by fraud during divorce. Jacob nodded. "Let's vet them. Build them up smart." This wasn't about playing savior. It was about giving people what he didn't have at the start, a place to go when everything collapses and nobody believes you. That afternoon, he helped a mother of 2 file a protective order after her ex tried to seize her business account. The day after, he sat with a retired man whose pension had been siphoned through a forged power of attorney. Every story hurt, but every win felt real. By Friday, they had 10 open cases, 2 press inquiries, in 1 envelope, and signed, hand-dropped. Inside, a single note. "You didn't just fight back. You gave others a reason to." Jacob folded the note slowly. The war was over. Now he was building something that would stand longer than the lies ever did. Lauren's face flickered across every local screen like a ghost trying to rewrite itself. She stood stiff at a press podium, flanked by attorneys and PR managers, eyes sunken but makeup flawless. "This is not an admission of guilt," she began, "but rather a statement of reflection on the unintended consequences of my actions." Jacob watched the feed from his office, arms crossed. Lauren continued, lips pressed tight. "I deeply regret the personal toll this situation has taken on those around me, particularly my former husband, who showed strength and dignity under circumstances no one should endure." Jacob chuckled under his breath. The apology wasn't hers. It was a settlement condition, required by the court, crafted by lawyers, rehearsed like a script. But it still mattered. The world was watching her crumble in the same spotlight she once bathed in. And while the cameras zoomed in, Jacob's phone buzzed, a text from the DA's office, "Second wave of indictments coming. Your testimony date confirmed." He turned off the TV, stood up, poured himself coffee. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was closure, delivered publicly, sealed legally, and watched by the same crowd that once called him paranoid. And all he had to do was stay standing. Later that month, Jacob stood in front of a whiteboard inside the foundation office. On it, circled in red, education, access, proof, prep. Val added a sticky note under prep that read, survivor kits, draft sample packets. They were building a toolkit, one every person could use before or during a divorce involving financial deception or manipulation. Legal templates, financial audit tips, emotional support contacts, safety plans. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real, useful. 3 new volunteers coming Monday, Val said. And Channel 6 wants a feature piece. Jacob nodded. Only if they focus on the mission, not the drama. He wasn't interested in fame. He wanted replication, impact, systems that worked long after he was gone. That afternoon, an older man named Lewis came in, head down, shaking hands with worn fingers. My ex-wife took everything, he said. I'm not looking for revenge. I just want to stop it from happening to someone else. Jacob sat with him, reviewed his case, walked him through his options. After, Lewis gripped his hand. You're doing something important here, he said. Jacob smiled for the first time all day. That's the plan. A week later, Jacob was cleaning out the last box from his father's workshop, the one he'd avoided since the funeral. Inside, beneath a rusted wrench and a bundle of old blueprints, he found a sealed envelope addressed to him. Jake, for when you finally start building something for yourself. He sat on the garage floor and opened it with a trembling hand. Inside, his father's handwriting, clear, steady. Son, if you're reading this, I hope you've survived something that tried to destroy you. Because life has a way of testing the ones meant to build. If you're rebuilding, do it not just for you, but for the next builder who doesn't have the strength yet. Make your foundation strong enough for them too. Jacob folded the letter slowly, tears caught in his throat. He stared at the blueprint in the box, not for a house, not for a business. It was a community center plan, labeled Phase 2, Open Doors, Open Futures. Jacob looked around the garage, his father's tools, his words, his silent support, even now. Then he picked up his phone and dialed Val. We're going to need more space. Jacob stood in front of the mirror in his new office. No suit, just a plain black button-down, sleeves rolled. The kind of thing a man wears when he's no longer hiding wounds, only showing up to work with purpose. The foundation had grown fast. What started with 2 desks now had a full-time staff, pro bono legal support, a community hotline, and a long waiting list of cases. But today wasn't about the office. He was speaking at a statewide justice conference, invited to tell his story, not as a victim, but as a man who stood up when every door tried to slam shut on him. He didn't rehearse. He didn't need to. Standing on the stage in front of 200 people, Jacob said, They called me paranoid, angry, emotional, but I wasn't broken. I was paying attention. He shared the blueprint of how he exposed fraud, how he tracked the lies, but more importantly, how he rebuilt without turning bitter. After, a woman in the crowd stood up during Q&A. Did revenge satisfy you? She asked. Honestly, Jacob didn't blink. No, he said. Not really. But protecting the next person? That's the part I'll carry forward. Silence. Then applause. When he stepped down, 3 more organizations reached out to collaborate. And that night, back at the foundation, he hung a new plaque on the wall above the door. Surviving is step 1. Changing the game is step 2. The next afternoon, Jacob walked out of a lecture hall at a local college where he'd just spoken to law students about digital evidence and domestic cases. He didn't expect anyone to wait, but she was standing by the water fountain. Late 20s, hoodie, backpack, eyes that had seen more than most people guessed. Jacob, she asked softly. He nodded. I just wanted to say, your story helped me leave. He froze, not because he didn't believe her, but because he suddenly realized this was the real payoff. The invisible one, the one you don't get applause for. She looked down. He emptied my accounts, said no one would believe me. But after I watched your speech last month online, I made a copy of everything, filed a report. I'm staying with my aunt now. Jacob nodded. I'm proud of you. That took guts. She smiled weakly. Still feels like I'm waiting for it to fall apart. He reached into his bag and pulled out a card, foundation contact info. Direct line. Nothing's falling apart, he said. You've already started rebuilding. She held the card like it was gold. like it was the first thing in weeks that felt solid in her hands. As she walked away, Jacob felt something stir in his chest. Not pride, not victory, responsibility. Because this wasn't about what was done to him anymore. It was about how far he could carry what he learned, so no one else had to learn it the hard way. Jacob stood on a hill outside the old house, the one he used to call home. In one hand, a metal box. Inside it, printed emails, old phone records, the burner phone, the hard drive that held it all. In the other, a lighter. He didn't need to keep it anymore. The evidence had served its purpose. The battle was over. The damage accounted for. The lesson lived. He placed the box in a metal burn barrel, struck the lighter, and held the flame until the first corner caught. The smoke rose into the dusk air, sharp at first, then softer, like even the lies had given up their hold. He didn't flinch, didn't film it, didn't post about it. He just watched. For a moment, Jacob remembered all the nights he sat in silence, wondering how she could smile while planning his destruction, wondering if he'd ever feel whole again. Now, he felt clean, finished. Lauren was no longer a shadow in his life. She was a name on an old file, one that no longer had power here. Jacob walked away from the flame, calm, whole, and as he reached his truck, he whispered to the wind, "No more smoke. Not in my lungs. Not in my life." And then, for the first time in a long time, he drove away from the ashes. The new building was clean, bright, glass walls, natural light, soft colors. A large hand-painted mural on the back wall read, "You were never crazy. You were cornered." It was the grand opening of the Miller Center, a permanent space for survivors of manipulation, financial abuse, and high-conflict separation. Part legal aid, part safe house, part second chance. Dozens of people had shown up. Volunteers, press, families. Some were just there for the free coffee. Others stood quietly, reading the flyers like their lives had been waiting for this place to exist. Jacob stood at the entrance, shaking hands, answering questions. A little boy ran up to him. "My mom says you're like Batman." Jacob smiled. "I'm just a guy who stopped being quiet." A local reporter asked him during the ribbon cutting, "Do you feel like this is justice?" He thought for a second, looked around at the people walking in and out, free, protected, rebuilding, and said, "It's better than justice. This is prevention." Later that afternoon, after the crowd thinned and the sun lowered behind the building, Jacob stepped into his private office. A desk, a window, and a single frame quote from his dad, "Build like someone's going to live in it after you." He sat down, breathed deep. Outside, the lights on the sign flickered on. The Miller Center, no longer an idea, but a legacy. And for the first time in a long time, Jacob didn't feel like someone who survived something. He felt like someone who made sure others didn't have to. 3 months later, Jacob wrote himself a letter. Not for the courts. Not for evidence. Just for him. If you're reading this, it means you made it. Not just out of the fire, but into a life that's yours again. And maybe one day, someone will read your story and decide not to give up either. Not because it's easy, but because it's possible. He folded the letter and slid it into a drawer. Locked it. Outside, the Miller Center buzzed quietly. Lies being rebuilt, justice being written slowly, daily, by people who never thought they'd get their power back. Lauren had disappeared from the headlines. Ryan had relocated. The scandals left them both in shadows. And Jacob? He no longer needed them to hurt. He just needed to keep building. Later that week, a teenage girl named Alina walked into the center with her aunt. Quiet, guarded. But Jacob saw the look, the one he used to have. The look of someone wondering if they mattered anymore. He met her in the hallway. "We've got your back here," he said gently. "You're not alone." She didn't speak, just nodded. And that was enough. Jacob turned, headed to the kitchen, and whispered to himself, "Phase 3 starts now." And that's how it ends, not with fire, not with rage, but with peace that was fought for. Now, I've got one question for you watching this right now. Have you ever rebuilt yourself from something that tried to destroy you? Tell me in the comments, and also let me know where in the world you're watching from. I see you out there, and I appreciate you. If you felt something in this story, If you were locked in from chapter 1 to chapter 45, like this video, hit that subscribe button, share it with someone who needs to believe in comebacks again, and I'll see you in the next thriller. A new story, a new revenge, a new reckoning. Until then, take care of your peace, protect your mind, and never stay quiet when the truth is on your side. The end.